Isn't it amazing? Just amazing. Coming into you, reporting live about America right now, because America is going through some stuff. Let me tell you, I find it just so amazing. First of all, we got to talk about this Confederate flag. We got to talk about the American history. We got to talk about it all. Then we got to talk about why is all this happening. Because it's all prophetic. Watch. Now, when we talk about this subject about, America's history, we talk about the Confederate flag. We talk about all those things that has to do with America and its so-called freedom, right? So when we talk about this, we cannot exclude the reason why they're a powerful country from the get-go. So when we think about what has happened, we have to go and do one thing. We go back and research bills that were permitted, that were instituted to become a powerful nation. But it took work. It took work to become a powerful nation. It didn't just happen by flight or by dream. It didn't happen that way. It happened through the blood, sweat, and tears of slaves. Okay? So when you understand what's going on in the news is really what's already been going on for the past hundreds of years. But now it's just coming on display, showing you the true colors, which through the years after slavery, through the years, what they tried to do is they tried to just, brush it under the rug about what happened to slaves and what we done to slaves. I mean, for instance, when you look at the movie, Birth of a Nation, it's crazy how all those films that were out at that time, like Medea ends up topping out with the most money. See, it's the foolishness that they want from us. It's the foolishness that they want to see about us, because they need something negative to say about the black man and the black folks in general. But this is where it gets interesting, because when that film came out, he didn't get no support from Hollywood. He didn't get no support from majority of anyone. He had to take money from past films and put that money into the new production or the new film, which was called Birth of a Nation. Now, what gets interesting about this whole entire thing of Birth of a Nation itself was that when it hit the films, they started saying in the news that no one's going to see the film. Now, I find it so funny, because why would Wall Street, out of all places, have to be like, oh, that movie was just really terrible, so no one even went to go see it? Why is that so important for you to say that? As many films have came out and been horrible. You just come out to say something about that one, though. And then not only that, but then people would actually go to the movie theaters. I'm talking about black folks. They'd come to the movie theaters. Or, who knows? But one video was showing one black man. He went to the movie theater. He goes and asks if he can get some tickets to see the screen or see the film. What did they say? Oh, it's sold out. They said it was packed or whatever. So he sneaks inside to see the film, and there's nobody in there except like 3 people. So why are they passing on a lie that's not the truth? Why is it so important for people not to see that film? Why is it such a fight to see something that was actually history? Why is that such a fight? We don't fight when it comes to the Jews, and we talk about the Holocaust. Matter of fact, when we look at right now, everyone fighting over the Confederate flag and how those representations and symbolics are coming down from the states, all over the country. You don't see the first thing you see is the neo-Nazis, and then you see this other crowd here. Then you see the Black Lives Matter. Everybody's a part of George Soros. That's the funny part. And then when you do the history about the KKK, they're Roman Catholics. Ain't nothing new. It's all, look, ain't nothing new under the sun. What has already been was already then. It's already been done. It's already been counted for. Okay, it's just another appointment. All right, the doctor called you, said, "Can you be here at this time?" And that's exactly what it is. You showed up at that time. We knew weeks before that we had to be at this appointment. It's the same thing. Nothing new under the sun. So when we look at this, it's so funny that, like, this is our culture, this is our heritage. Well, what about when we had a culture and we had a heritage? What about that? What about our heritage? You took us all the way from West Africa, off the slave coast, and then you go to tell us that we dumb, we can't speak English, we can't read or write. Of course you can't read or write because it's a foreign language. If I came to China and I started trying to speak to the Chinese men, of course I'm not going to know his language because that's not my native tongue. So yes, I'd be illiterate, right? Yeah, I'd be illiterate. But when we consider the fact of me getting taught, I wouldn't be illiterate. But so I come into a nation and you tell me that I am dumb. You need to work for me because this is free labor. You're going to work off your sweat and the blood off your sweat. We're not even going to talk about the rapings and all that stuff. We ain't got to talk about that. But it's so funny to me how all of a sudden the strategy of this whole thing is very articulate. What I mean by that, it's strategic because they use the neo-Nazis to say, oh, we've always been against the Jews. We've always been against the Jews. We're coming after the Jews. Okay, but it's funny how you're using that. See, the Holocaust is always the scapegoat to not talk about the black slavery that was in America. It's always listen to what I said. It's always the scapegoat to not talk about the slavery that happened in America. Okay? Because all we ever hear is 1948, Hitler, 1948, Hitler, for 1967, Hitler, blah, 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 blah. But isn't it something that the Jews, let's call them the so-called Jews, because everyone has found out the truth about y'all. The so-called Jews are not even Shemitics. In other words, they're not Shem. They're not the children of Shem. Okay, even the Bible tells you in chapter 9 of Genesis. Okay, it says that the Japheths, the children of Japheth, shall dwell in the tents of Shem. It doesn't say Shem is going to dwell in the tents of Shem. It says the Ashkenazi. It actually says the Ashkenazi is going to dwell in the house of the Shem. In other words, the people, the children of Shem. That would be us. Okay? So even the Bible is telling you, you are not the Jews of the Bible. That's why you say Jewish, because you wish. Because you're not the people of the book. Doesn't mean you can't be saved. No, we ain't saying that. Don't mean that, because the promise of Abraham is still yet in amen. But here's the thing. You cannot use that lie anymore because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Everything has been uncovered because the Most High is so gracious and so kind that he would show all the people around the world that somebody's getting ready to be a burdensome stone. Now the scripture plainly told us that the Jews were going to be a burdensome stone to all the people in the world. Now, how could something like that be how could something like that happen? Because that's a huge and profound statement. Well, when we think about this, you must think about it in a logical manner. How do we think about it in a logical manner? Simple. Somebody has to take the identification of the Jew. He said in Revelation, I believe it was chapter 3 or 2, where he says, I know thy works and thy lie. They call themselves Jews, but they lie, and thou art rich. Why is it that the Ashkenazis own BT? Why is it that they own every media station in the world? Why is it they own the oil? They own the bank systems. You understand? They're rich. They're rich. How is it that you have all these black rappers and none of them can come together and buy BET? Because somebody is owning them because they're slaves with underneath this umbrella of these Ashkenazi Jews. See, this lie been going on for too long and it's been exposed now. That's what's happening. So it was funny to me. I looked at the Dallas newspaper. First thing I see, oh, the Confederate flag. Everybody's trying to kill the Jew. Blah, 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 blah. They're taking away the heritage and the culture. But our heritage and culture got taken away. But don't remember that. Let's just act like mentally that never happened, okay? Let's act like that didn't happen, and let's just focus on right here, right now. Right here, right now, okay? Right here, right now. We're not even going to talk about Bill and Belinda Gates, what they do in Africa. We ain't even going to talk about that. We ain't going to talk about what happened in India, where they had 80,000 kids taking the polio vaccine. Next thing you know, they're all paralyzed. We ain't going to talk about none of that, though. Let's not talk about that, because that's too deep. I don't believe that stuff. I know he's a good human being, right? Right. So let's keep it there. So, well, let's talk about the real thing. So it's funny to me how they're using the Jews, once again, the Jews as the scapegoat. As the scapegoat to not talk about actual slavery that happened in the history of America. Because all of your lies, George Washington had more black women than most pimps on the street. Come on, man, really? Look, we can talk about Jefferson. We can talk about any one of those guys back in history. And you will see all them guys on slaves. Every last one of them. I cried when I was a child. You know why? Because I did a book report on George Washington. And you know what? I read about him having slaves. And I was like, this guy has slaves. And guess what? They look like me. So the first thing I thought about when I was a child, am I still a slave? What? I started scratching my head. But I had to bring this book report. But now I don't even feel comfortable to do the book report. So I told the teacher, I don't even want to talk about this. Because this looks really bad. I'm talking about this guy is cool. He's one of the, one of the most political figures that I could think of in my mind. And I chose him out of all people in the world. I didn't even choose Martin Luther King. Nobody. But I chose him. I didn't choose Malcolm X. I chose him. And then guess what? The man had slaves. Broke my heart to the core. Broke me. But it's not about race. But it's about a people in the world. You got to understand this. It's about a people in the world. See, God's getting ready to expose America. This year right here, you're going to see so much water. If you go back, let me show you something. Now, God showed me this dream. Now, I was in a dream, and I had this weird staff in my hand, and I was standing on top of the Atlantic Ocean. And standing in the Atlantic Ocean, I could see behind me, there was Florida. I could see the state of Florida. Now, it looked like Plainfield as if you were in a plane looking down, right? And you're getting a little bit low to where you can see the actual state. So I was in the Atlantic Ocean, and I was standing there with this staff, and I kind of had something like it wasn't sackcloth. It was like I don't know, some type of material like that. And next thing I know, I'm looking straight at Africa, and I saw this thunderstorm that was so dark and it was powerful. And it was nothing but lightning just flashing, lightning and flashing, boom, boom, boom. All this noise. And then I said to myself, what is this? And now I had enough dreams. I don't know about you, but I had enough dreams to where I know how to exit out of dreams if I don't want to be in the dream. So I said to myself in the dream, I'm about to get out this dream. This is weird. Okay. So, but right before I did that, I heard, I'm going to avenge this people. And I said, what? And now it wasn't like words like how I'm talking, but it was just simple as if you could hear somebody thinking, as if you can think about what somebody is saying, but you hear it in your mind. That's how it was. So when he said that, the Most High, this had to be the Most High, because when I saw this, it was interesting. I began to look at what's going on, and then he said, go look at the cyclones. And then the dream went off. That was it. So I went up and looked up cyclones. And guess what? That thunderstorm I saw was right above West Africa. And then I said, this is weird. Why is there a thunderstorm above West Africa? So I began to look up, the cyclones, tornadoes, and hurricanes. That's cyclones. Those are both considered cyclones, right? So when I begin to do that, next thing I know is that I looked at the history of cyclones. But before I looked at the history, I looked at it where cyclones begin at. And they begin June 1st all the way through, I think it was November something, right? I think November 30th, whatever. But that was the hurricane season. But then, or cyclone season. But then what was also interesting was that it comes right out of the Slavery Coast. Is where these waves begin to form. And I said, that's interesting. Very interesting. And so after that, then I said to myself, okay, now, this is getting kind of weird, because what does Africa have to do with this? So I found out that these waves end up turning into hurricanes gets close to the ocean or the shore of the Gulf Coast or the ports, and then it begins to turn to tornadoes or stays a hurricane. So I begin to look at the history of all the hurricanes that hit America. And you know what I found was interesting? Every last tornado, hurricane hit plantations. I said every last hurricane and tornado that landed, that became an event, you name it, Katrina, Matthew, Isaac, whoever, Irene, it hit America, and it always hits the plantations. I started looking at pictures where pigs were just lined up on the ocean shores. And I said, what does this mean? Then I began to look at the maps of how they trailed, how these Atlantic waves were trailing and going to these ports, like Galveston, Texas. When you go back to the 1900s, you see one of the most devastating earthquakes you have ever seen in your life. And there was, I believe it was 8,000 to 15,000 people died. They said it was so many bodies, they were just taking horses and chariots and just throwing bodies in the chariots. That's how many folks it was. And then they take them off to the ocean and throw them out in the ocean, the bodies. So I'm just like, wow, what does this mean? Why is it hitting plantations? So then I thought to myself, when he said, I'm going to avenge this people. We know who the real Jews are because DNA, science, and even themselves admitted that the Black Americans, some of these folks, is some of these tribes that the Bible is talking about. So I just started thinking to myself, I said, wow, is he trying to say that all this time, these were punishments upon America? All these times that these hurricanes and tornadoes would hit, were they all judgments? So then I began to look back at Katrina, and I remember certain pastors would say, you know, televangelists, they were on there talking about, oh, this was provoked by what's his name? George Bush, because he bothered Israel. Current Israel today I'm talking about. He bothered Israel. And so God got mad and sent the hurricane and was warning them, you better stop. But then I found out, actually, Hurricane Katrina, it was about Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was actually a Pentecost for LGBT and homosexuality, all that stuff, right? It's a Pentecost for them. All states were involved coming to New Orleans. And the day before it was supposed to pop off, he sent that hurricane. And then I started thinking, I said, well, what do you say about the black folk? Because they were dying too. All those people involved were part of this. Association brings on simulation. All the liars hang with the liars. So God destroyed everything over there. And he made it to where there ain't going to be no party. I'm shutting it down. So that's what that was about. So when I keep hearing people like Mark Bills say, oh, you know, God has always defended these people. They're lying. They're lying because we know who the true Hebrews are now. They're lying. They're lying. It's either they don't know or they work for the folks that do know, and you are a part of that organization. Period. Point blank. Done. There's no other explanation. You either know or you don't know. That's all it is to me. Because it's so amazing how he sends it right out of West Africa, where the Slave Coast port is at. If you go back, if you look at the map, it says gold and this and that and the other. It comes right out of that. That's where the waves develop. First is a thunderstorm, then it develops the waves, then it comes out to America. And then I started looking at old videos of hurricanes and stuff and looking at the news, and they always just say, oh, the Atlantic Ocean has some activity in it. They never would say it was coming from West Africa. They never started saying that until now. And I just found this so interesting. I said, So all this time they've been lying. Lying, because they know this was judgments upon them. So to help more fabricate the lie, they left West Africa out and kept saying, oh, God is protecting Israel. Lie. Biggest lies. God is destroying America because he still has his children. By blood. The first covenant folk. He still has them. So he still, if you look at any other country, they all have, hurricanes. But no one has as many devastating ones as America does. And it always hits their plantations. It's never different. I just found that just extraordinary. But it brings us back to who we are and what the true history is. And God is exposing it for us. We ain't got to go out there and sit out there with the crazy Hebrew Israelites. Them guys is nuts. They out there working for the government, institutionalized. We already know. They lying too. That's a pun. That's a smear on the mirror. And somebody need to clean it off. So we're cleaning it off by this truth that we have here. So you guys stay strong, and we're going to continue to watch. Now I'm telling you, it's going to be so much water in America this year. Because all them killings that they've been killing, all them people they've been killing, these black folks, all these folks have been, I'm not saying they've been justified because they've done wrong. But I'm saying the way you've treated them all these years, is going to be a judgment really bad this year. I'm telling you, you're going to see so much water in America, it's going to make folks run to church. I promise you that. You're going to be shocked. Watch. Just watch. So watch that Gulf. Watch that coast. Because now you know who it is that's doing it. Matter of fact, when you get home, read Nahum chapter 1, verse 3. Nahum chapter 1, verse 3. Oh my. It says it by itself. It's like what Peter said. Peter said, who is this man that has power to the point where the waters even obey him? Who is he? So y'all get ready and watch these judgments come upon America. We're going into tribulation now. We're going into it. You're getting ready to see. We're going into tribulation. This is now the shift. This is it. There's no more chances after this. We're going right into that 7 years, and we're going to hit that climax. You're going to see stuff in America you ain't never saw. And you never even thought would even happen. But you're getting ready to see it get uncovered. Because God is getting ready to fight. He said, vengeance is mine. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. All right. Peace and love.